All right, guys, my name's Dylan Street. Grew up in Metropolis, Illinois. Metropolis is just another suburb of Paducah. We just happen to be across the river, so that's where I was born and raised. And I'm gonna share my testimony. I'm gonna speak. I'm gonna teach. I'm gonna preach a little bit, but ultimately, we're gonna go over the timeline of my life. It's probably the most powerful thing that I have that I could ever offer to anybody. And so, I get times where I get tired of telling it, but, there's 8.6 billion people that have never heard it. Now, I'm going to get into it, but I feel like, just because I know Justin and CB, they're cut from a different cloth, right? Me and CB, we're cut from a very similar extreme cloth, regardless of what direction that we go to in life. So I'm probably going to keep it pretty uncensored. Is that all right? Can we do that? Okay, sweet. Now, before I get into this, so I want y'all to know that the same God who pulled me through my testimony, through the challenges and struggles of my life, is the same God that can keep you from it, okay? Especially for the younger generation. The same God that pulled me through it is the same God that can keep you from it. Don't get it twisted, because I get a lot of people that are like, man, I don't have a testimony like you do. I don't. It's just not that cool. I don't have too much to share with people as far as my story. And you should be thankful that you haven't had to go through some of these things, right? I mean, I've got parents that I call, monthly or even, probably bi-monthly that, I did the first drugs with their son, right? That are still in addiction today. I remember one of my buddies, David Mason, we were probably 15, 16. We started smoking weed and doing stuff like that. And his little brother is about 13 years old. And David always went to bed so early, so I'd go downstairs. So smoked my first joint with him, did my first line of coke with him. And that guy's still in and out of jail. And I constantly, people always send it to me when he goes to another jail or another prison. And then, man, I can't do anything but call his mom and just tell her I'm so sorry. So what I'm getting at is, it's not cool. I mean, it's great that God saved me, and many that may have a story like mine, but if you don't have the story, I think that speaks just as loud, okay? I really do. All right, so we're going to pray. We're going to pray before we get in here. Father, we just thank you, Lord. We thank you for a new day. Lord, that this would be a great day. Lord, I just ask that you protect everyone in here. We just ask that you protect all the families represented in this house, Lord. Pray for my church going on at home, Lord, that you're changing lives today. Lord, thank you for changing my life. We just ask for blessings and protection over everybody here and everyone represented here, Lord. And we just ask that you sow your seeds, and Father, and then water them. And we love you and we honor you. Amen. Amen. Man, so you know why I like this church? I don't remember when they came to this building. I don't remember. Maybe like 2017. Can someone confirm that? Does anybody know when they got in this building? CB. He ain't here. So I remember coming. It might have been like 17 or 18. We did like a 3 to 5 day revival, and it was different. They had the pews, and it was a little bit different vibe. And what I like about this church is that, CB, and I haven't met you yet, but all the guys that run this, man, they're real people, like real people. See, when I go to some churches, and I truly believe that God has, He's got different churches in place for different types of people, right? Different personality styles, just people that's been through different walks of life. And I think you find where you go pretty quickly, because I can't vibe with, and no offense, God, like I said, God moves in all these different ways. I need real people. Like if you got a pastor that I can't identify with, where it's constantly like I'm telling him my problems, but he doesn't have any, it's hard for me to relate, right? It's just hard for me to relate. And so I talked to Justin, I talked to CB. They're real people that live a real life, that really chase a real God and that have real struggles that I can identify with. Me and CB, we don't talk as much as we used to, but when we do, it's just like, man, we pick it right back up, because we're both chasing, this life the best that we know how. So, I'm going to start from the very beginning. I was in addiction. I'm 32 years old, so I was in addiction from 2004, 2005, all the way to 2014. So I have about a decade of addiction. Like I said, I grew up in Metropolis. I'm 32 now, got 3 kids, a 5-year-old little boy named Silas. He's a savage, hoping he gets saved soon. Sophie is 7. She's phenomenal. And then Skyland, she's 11. She's rock solid, definitely the Holy Spirit of the household. She's top notch. She's an adult. She's great. She's great. And then my wife, Sierra, she stuck with me through thick and thin. Don't know why. She got in a Facebook group called, it was called Stayers, and that was women. This was supposed to be later. So she got in this group. She was called a Stayer, and that's no matter what the husband's going through, for how long, she's staying. And so, yeah. And she did. So, gosh, man, me growing up, I was born in 90. First 10 years of my life, man, it was, we were probably like middle class, right? Pretty average stuff for, the Midwest. We were more on the poor side growing up. It was me, I had an older brother, Jared. He's about 2 years older than me. And then my older sister, she's about 4 years older than me. And, we started in an apartment till I was 3 or 4 years old. Then my dad got a really good job, and he rented this, nicer house on a farm. It was a rental. He'd become a construction guy. Well, quickly he moved up to a superintendent. So then my mom didn't have to work anymore, and so she would stay at home, and my dad became a superintendent. Then he started, doing all these hotels, a ton of hotels, on this interstate all the way up to St. Louis down to Mississippi. So at that point, we became, middle class. I wouldn't say upper middle class, but middle class. And we lived a good life, right? We just it was a good life. My mom was a youth pastor, so the gospel's always been in our life. Like, I always knew God was real. I knew these things. I grew up in it. And I would say so probably up until, 10 years old. Like, it was just a good life. I'm your average, like, C plus student, all the way up until I got into addiction. Raced dirt bikes from probably, 10 to 13. I was really good. Raced a lot around here in Sturgis and Nebo and all these different places. And that was probably my favorite part of when I was growing up as a kid and a teen. Around 14 is when it all really started going downhill. So my parents, I found out my dad, as he was out on the road, he cheated on my mom. And long story short, he had another baby. Now, my family's just been in, the Metropolis area for forever. My mom's a youth pastor, been in this church for forever. So this was like a big blow to the family name, right? So this is kind of a big blow. Definitely, they're very shameful, very embarrassed. So going through all that, my mom took him back because my mom's a freaking saint. And she took my dad back and, started raising what I know as my little brother. We don't know, we don't know who his mom was. We just know that my mom's his mom. Like, if you look at me, he's my full-blooded brother. I don't know any different. We've got, both my mom and my dad, they have full custody of him. So the other mom's completely out of the picture. But yeah, so my dad just didn't do right? He didn't repent. He didn't change his life. He didn't really, he just really wasn't sorry. And so, 15 is when it all went downhill. Looking back, I couldn't think that this kind of really changed my life, but, it did. When I was 15, my dad, after all this happened, he's embarrassed, so he's like taking all the big road jobs. And then my mom, she has to get full-time job at Dillard's in Paducah. She was become general manager, so she's working like 50, 60 hours a week. And then me, more of a country boy, grew up on four-wheelers and dirt bikes, 12 miles outside of Metropolis. We moved in town. And my mom's working full-time, and Dad's only home on the weekends. So I got free reign. I can just do and go as I please. I can just do what I want. And pretty quickly, in between my 8th grade and freshman year, I started smoking weed. And and then probably what made it all go super fast is I found a girlfriend. She just so happened to be a senior. Have no idea why, and she was already into some really, really deep stuff. Backing up to probably 9 or 10 years old, and I always bring this up. Some of y'all may not like me for it, but music's got a stronghold on your life, depending on the type of music that you listen to. And I remember at 10 years old, my mom used to do this thing every year. It's called a skip day, right? So she would, I don't know if she lied to the school or whatever, but she would take, me out, and we'd go out for a whole day. We'd go shopping. She would let us do whatever we wanted. And she did that with my older brother and my older sister as well. It was one of the greatest days. It was like Christmas, right? It was like Christmas. So I remember, when we got home at 3 o'clock, who knows what TRL is, right, on MTV? Yeah, okay. So this was around the time when Hi, My Name Is come out by Eminem. Anybody know what song I'm talking about? Yeah? Okay. So that song comes out, and on MTV, it's super duper edited, and it wasn't so bad. So on my skip day, I made sure that we went into FYE and we got that album. I didn't know the difference between censored and uncensored. I just didn't know. So we go put that in. My mom is a youth pastor. I think she had stepped down for about a year at this time. We put this in, and we're like, let's just let it play. And I don't know if you've listened to the old like Marshall Mathers LPs or EPs. My mom threw that out the window so quick. And so I'm thinking, I heard the cuss words, but I'm thinking like, man, what was so bad? So, in this same time, Napster, Kazam, LimeWire, right? They're all breaking out. And my buddy, he lived in town. He had a faster internet connection. Like I said, I'm around 10 years old. So I'm like, bro, burn me this, burn me this CD. So I burned that CD, and every night, I would listen to it. We go to bed at like 10, and I would listen to it. I had my little Walkman, and I'd listen to it. And I had no idea. I knew the cuss words, but I had no idea what he was talking about, fighting with 5 little white Vicodin pills, fighting all this stuff. I just didn't know. I had no idea what he was talking about. So as I progressed through life, man, and then rap, it really gets a stronghold on my life, looking back from that 10 to 15-year-old range. So I've got this new girlfriend at 15, 16. Man, I would say by 16 years old, I start selling weed, and I wasn't addicted to a particular type of drug, but I was addicted to this lifestyle that had been formed in my head about, what was cool and how I should live and the music I should listen to and all the things, the cars I drive, the belts that I wear, all that kind of stuff. And so, I'm going to progress pretty quick through this. So at 17, I caught 4 cases in 4 counties. If you know anything about Southern Illinois, I caught Massac County, Johnson County, Polk County, and then Ballard County, Kentucky. I caught 4 cases, all burglary charges, within 2 weeks' time. So I went from having a couple misdemeanors like a glass pipe or whatever found, and then it was one night, me and some buddies, we bought a couple bottles of Klonopins, and we ate them, and then somehow we're trying to think of how we could make a bunch more money or steal stuff to make money, whatever it was. So we ended up robbing this grocery store that one of the guys happened to work at, and he knew where all the cameras were, and he knew where the safe was. And this was in Polk County. Just so happens, Polk County is probably like 800 people, maybe. It's in a little town called Golconda, Illinois. And so we ended up, the biggest problem is my grandfather, my mom's dad, he owned the Golconda Marina. The Golconda Marina was a pretty big business there. It was pretty large. They had a ton of boats. He was very well known. He also owned an insurance company. So we robbed the only grocery store that they have there. There was no Dollar Generals on every corner at this time. Like, this was it, right? So we robbed this place. Then we robbed an older gentleman behind it for his medication. Then we robbed a house in Massac County. And then we robbed a doctor in Ballard County, all within a 2-week span. And we were staying at the Baymont Inn in Metropolis. And we had took everything from this grocery store. It was 250 cartons of cigarettes. They rented DVDs, like 300 DVDs, tons of alcohol, just all this stuff. And so, we dollied the safe out, and there's like 10 grand in it. So 2 weeks, we blow all this money, so we didn't have any money. So we start selling the cartons of cigarettes. Well, some lady thought it was weird. She bought a carton, and then she turned it into the cops. They were able to trace the numbers back. So wasn't long, they raided my grandfather's house where I was staying at the time. And then so I'm 17 years old. They hold me in Massac County Jail for probably 7 months until I turned 18. They kept continuing the case so they could charge me fully. At that time, I took a plea deal, and I got 4 years in all 4 counties. So that would have been, 16 years in total, and they ran them concurrent, which means you got a 4-year sentence, right? So I got the 4 years, and then the judge put in a recommendation to boot camp. It's just like a normal military boot camp, only for prisoners, right? A little more intense. So I ended up taking that, and I was in Massac County Jail for about 7-8 months. Then I had to go to Menard in southern Illinois. It's in Chester, Illinois. I was in there for 96 days waiting for a boot camp spot to open. Then I had to go to Pinckneyville for a month and wait even longer, and then I got in there. About 3 months in, it's a 4-month program. It's 120 days. I got in there. I was very well liked. I mean, I was just kind of a snake, you know. I could get people to like me, but I just didn't have any character or integrity to uphold that, right? I had all kinds of friends, but I would either, try to take their girlfriend, or I'd rob them, or just whatever. I was just a piece of crap, right? I don't know any other way to explain it. So I get in there, and I become the admin porter, and that's the best job that you could have, and there's only 2 guys that had it. And so what we started doing is every Sunday you got to have your family come in, and they could visit with you, and you could buy sodas and candy bars out of the vending machine. Well, we were the ones that came in and cleaned up after that. So during my time when my parents would come, because they only lived like 40 minutes south of DuQuoin, we would get candy bars and bags of chips. Well, we would just throw them in the trash, knowing that we would be the ones cleaning them up, right? So we had this mass amount, this stockpile of candy and chips and all this stuff. And so we were hiding it. What we were doing is we were trading this stuff. So, in prison, food is it. That's all you got. That's everything. Jail, prison, it's all you got. So I remember this one particular day, we go clean it. I got a guy, he wants to trade me 3 weeks worth of pancakes for a 3 Musketeers, right? So I get my 3 Musketeers, and everywhere you go at boot camp, you run to. So I've got this 3 Musketeers stuck right here, and we were running back to the dorm, and another correctional officer stopped me and said, hey, carry these 5-gallon buckets in. Well, when we left the admin room, they have to call and be like, hey, Street and whatever his name is heading down to the dorm, and if we're not there in like a minute and a half, which is about long, they're trying to figure out what's going on. So we get there, another CO stops us, didn't tell anyone that, he had us help him. We carry these 5-gallon buckets. We get to the dorm, like, what took so long? It was like 6 months. I was like, bro, the CO is like, whatever, put your hands on the wall. So we get up like this, boom, found my 3 Musketeers, right? Pretty petty. Well, I had to go back to prison because of that candy bar. I've never ate a 3 Musketeers to this day. I can assure you that. I didn't like them anyway. But I had to go back to prison for 28 days. I got 2 showers, 1 letter a week. And then when I went back, I had a target on my head, and I just stopped speaking. I got through that, graduated boot camp. Gosh, when was this, man? I don't know. It's kind of hard. My timeline's kind of tough to decipher. But I think it's around at the end of 2018. I was 18 years old. No, sorry, 2008. And so I get out. My grandfather, who I just destroyed his little town of Golconda by robbing the grocery store and just all this stuff, he gracefully, he let me come and work for him. So I work for him. I'm working on the marina. I'm away from Metropolis. And then I started hanging out with this chick, and she started introducing me to Harrisburg, Illinois. That is the worst small town I have ever been in my life. It just so happens to be a spot where people from Evansville, Memphis, St. Louis, it's like this melting pot of families, and you've got gang members, and it's just wild for a little town, with 15, 20,000 population. Just the craziest place I've ever been in. Shootings all the time. So I started hanging out here, and man, I started smoking weed again, and then I started selling weed again, and then I just started living this whole lifestyle again. And through that time, I met my today wife. So this is, 08, 09. I met my today wife, and, she would hang out with me a little bit, but she knew something was up. And so at this time, I've got like an ankle monitor on me for 6 months, right? So, gosh, I remember I was going in Walmart. I was stealing a 5th of vodka, and I had an ounce of weed in my pocket. And I get caught, and then I go back, and then I had a pound of weed in the car. So I go back to prison, and this time I got 3 years, and I had to do it at 85% because I was on parole. So I go to Saline County Prison. Go to Saline County Prison, and then I go. Is that right? Yeah, that's right. So then I go in. I do about 2 years. I get out. I'm on probation again, and so we're getting. This is November 10th, 2010. Beginning of 2011. I got out, and my uncle he let me interstate compact. This is how you move from one state of parole to another. And my family knew that I just had to get away from Southern Illinois in total. So in 2011, I get out and I go to Springfield, Missouri. It's about 5 hours away, about 30 miles north of Branson, if you've ever been there. It's a great town. So I go there and I start working heavy machinery, and I'm making like good money. I'm making like $30, $35 an hour. I'd met my wife, and so we were kind of talking through this time. And so I get here and I'm staying with my uncle till I can get on my feet. And I finally talk my wife, or my girlfriend at the time, to come and live with me. So I'm in Springfield. We're making good money. She's working at this assisted living center, making pretty good money. And at this time, and I started rapping at this time, and not the good kind, but just rapping in general. So I started hanging out at the studio, and I met this guy. His name's Chill. And I took a Percocet 30, something that I would never take. If anyone has ever struggled with opiates, you know right now if you buy one of those off the street, you don't know if you're getting fentanyl or the real thing. It's very scary. It's very scary. So at this time, I'm taking these things, but I'm only doing it like once a week when I go to the studio. And I would say this is the first time I ever experienced real addiction. Like, I can't live without this pill or these amount of pills. So I get my wife to come, and I'm getting in the studio, and then I just start taking these things every day. So 1 Percocet 30 a day, or 3 Vicodin 10s a day, whatever I could get a hold of. And then it quickly progressed to, taking 3 or 1 in the morning to taking some after lunch. And within a year, I'm taking 12 Vicodins a day, 12 to 15 Vicodins a day, Vicodin 10s, or 3 Percocet 30s a day. And so my wife sees, like, why don't we have any money? We ended up getting married in 2012, and I'm literally holding this whole life that she really doesn't see. My wife, she's never done the things that I've done. She's never lived the way that I live. She just doesn't know anything about it. But she quickly starts catching on. When I get deep in addiction, I'm starting to take all these pills and do all this stuff, and I can't afford. We have our first daughter in 2012, Skyland. She's 11 now, and I can't take care of this family with this addiction. So I had this great idea. As I'm working heavy machinery, I'm going to start selling drugs again, right? So start selling weed again. I'm trying to afford my family and our living. I'm going to church on Sundays. I'm looking like I'm doing it, but I have this pill addiction, hiding within me. And I started selling weed, and I was like, man, I'm not making enough money. So I had this great idea to start selling heroin that I had never done before, but I knew I could get it pretty cheap. So I start selling heroin, and I've got this pill addiction. I'm going to church on Sundays. I'm still going to work every day, 50 hours a week, running, dozers and push cats and motor graders and things of that nature. But I'm still just not cutting it. And I really got scared because as deep as I had been in addiction and the places that I've been, I remember going to sell a bag of heroin, and I walk in this house, and I had seen people at a level I had never seen before, laid out with needles in their arms, and it really felt dark to me, and that scared me. It scared me a lot. Now, I had snorted heroin, but I had never stuck a needle in my arm, and I'm thankful, and I still never have to this day, because I don't, I may have never climbed out of it. If anyone's been down that road, that's a rough road. So, I'm living in this thing. I'm living this duplicative life, and we had this, we had an idea to rob somebody. So we ended up robbing this guy for about 30 guns. Broke into his house, dressed up as construction guys. Broke in his house, loaded it up, TVs, PlayStations, all this stuff. And the goal is I was going to take a 40 split. He was going to take a 60 split, and he would get rid of everything. So we take this on. About a week later, he'd paid me my 40% for a couple of guns, and then boom, I saw his face on the news, and he gets caught with every single one of these guns, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm about to go down, and found out that this falls in the world of like terrorist charges when you're trafficking this many guns. So within 12 hours, I packed up as much as I could. I got my wife, I got my daughter, and we get back to Southern Illinois, left all my other stuff in a storage, and I was gone, scared to death. And so as bad as that all is, we're about to really, really, really go on the roller coaster ride. We get back home where both of our families are. This is, into 2012, beginning of 2013. We get back home, and at this point, we're around family, so I start leaving my wife more often. See, back in Springfield, I knew she didn't have anybody, so I was somewhat anchored there where, I wasn't going weeks and weeks without seeing her, maybe a day or two at a time, but I was anchored there. My daughter was there. I had a bit of morals to an extent where I wasn't just going to completely leave them and not give them at least what I thought that they needed at the time. But when we get home, that's a different story. I was like, man, we got all of our families here, and so I take back off to Harrisburg, start living this lifestyle again, really started having, a tremendous amount of affairs on my wife, and through this process, I went on. This is going to be August 5th of 2014. This is going to be my last rendezvous. I'd robbed my best friends at the time. I robbed their house while they were at work, and I stayed with these guys, but I had this addiction, right? I had this pill addiction, and I had to feed it, and that was all there was to it. So I robbed these guys just for everything: clothes, computers, TVs, just everything they got. Kicked the door in, put it all in my car. That's in Paducah, Kentucky, and I take it all the way back into Harrisburg, Illinois, and I go sell it at this dope house, trade it for, I don't remember, 70 or 80 Vicodins. And I'm parked outside. Well, I guess there was, the cops watching the house. So I ended up leaving there. And there was a guy, I was counting some money, and I turned around to talk to someone, and I guess a guy snatched like a $100 bill, and he left, and they told me where he lived, and I had a pistol on me. So I get in my car, I've got a pistol on me, I've got this bottle of Vicodin, still some stolen stuff that they didn't want. So cop gets behind me, and we're flying through Harrisburg, and I went on the not proud of it, I'm just telling you, I went on the longest high-speed chase of Southern Illinois history. It's 56 miles, 18 cops. Went from Harrisburg, Illinois to Carrier Mills, Illinois, to Stoneford, Illinois, to Golconda, Illinois, back into Johnson County, up into Ozark. And I finally kind of got away from them, and we had a street family farm. We had like 4 family owners of this farm. And I went and I hid my car in there, took my license plates off, threw the gun out, got rid of the pills. And so it just so happened that one of the cops knew my grandfather and knew he owned that property. So I had ran out in the woods, and I couldn't get a hold of my dad. My phone died. So I go back up to the car, I'm going to juice this thing up for like 5 minutes so I can get a hold of my dad. We can come up with some sort of meeting point. Go back up there, and then I guess a cop, he knew where my family farm was, so he parks down the road, and he walks up here, and he's in this field, and I just see a gun, and I get down. So at that time, I go to jail. Go to Harrisburg, Illinois, Saline County Jail. I get in there. I'm in there for 2 or 3 days. And, man, I've been in jail so much. I've been in jail 27 times. I've been in jail so much, I know what to do. At this point in my life, I wore white boxers every day because I knew that I could keep them when I get to jail. If you have white boxers on, or else you got to buy them. So I get to jail, and it's just right back at it. Who's got the hooch? Who's smuggling the cigarettes in? Where's the weed at? You're just trying to figure all this stuff out. So I'm in there. I'm about 3 days in, and I get this picture, comes up under my door, and it's a picture of these 3 kids. And I had no idea who they were. It was pictures from some years back. And finally, I couldn't figure it out. And then it all dawned on me. Someone told me. They said this particular guy sent that to me. Well, this guy was in here. He stabbed his stepdad to death 56 times. He'd been in there for 3.5 years. He's trying to plead insanity. And I had robbed his wife and his daughter in Harrisburg. So this guy absolutely wants to take me out. So I get in there, and this is a very gigantic man with quite the past. He's in a motorcycle gang, all this stuff. And, as tough as we all try to be, inside I was like, oh, man, this guy pretty well runs the jail to the greatest extent of what you can. And so I get in there, I hear all this, and then I was walking down to the library one day, and he had a guy in his room. He was a diabetic, and if you call the intercom room and you say, "Hey, I need my shot," they have to pop it immediately. So he was waiting until I went by. His buddy in the sale said, "I need my shot." So they pop the door. The guy comes out. We start fighting. It got shut down pretty quick. But then about a week later, we were going to go to rec, and I heard, and this is over about a 1 month period. We were going to go to rec, and we went at different times because we were on different sides of the jail. So I caught word that he had made some sort of shank out of a toothbrush and a razor blade, because they gave you one every morning. And so I'm telling my mom all this. She's scared to death. Well, she figures out how to get my power of attorney, finds out I had a 401k from the heavy machinery company, and she told me that I'll bail you out under one condition: if you'll go to rehab. So, of course, I don't know if I'm going to go to rehab or not. Probably not. Probably didn't plan on it. I just want out, right? So I get out of rehab. I get out of jail. My mom bonds me out, and thankfully I went to my dad's house, and I really just stayed stagnant for probably about a month and a half, waiting on a bed to come open. I'd snuck out a few nights, stole my dad's truck and credit cards a couple times, but I come back, and I knew that I needed to go. And I remember the night before, my wife's there, my daughter's there, my mom's there, and my dad, and they're split up. I mean, my mom looked at me like a burning man that she was trying to throw off a cliff into water. Like, I was at my last straw. If I went to a family, which we have a huge family and we're very tight-knit, but if Dylan's coming to Christmas, like, there's no purses. Like, they would literally collaborate that, hey, they'd have text threads, throw all the purses in Karen's car. You got 12 purses in one car because I'm going to be there. And that's what I was looked at, just filthy, no integrity. And oddly, my mom doesn't know how, but I just lived like everything was always okay, tried to be the life of the party, and it's really hard to tell that I was in addiction because I tried to take care of myself the best that I could. And, it was just off-putting to people because they'd be like, there's just no way that he's doing all this stuff and catching all these charges and going to prison. But I was just a supreme snake. I was just, that's all I knew. Manipulation at its finest. So I go to this rehab, and it's called Teen Challenge. Anybody ever heard of Teen Challenge? Teen Challenge? Yeah. You got one. How far is Dixon, Providence from here? Not very far. Yeah. So I ended up going to the one in St. Louis. When I got there, I snaked my way in like I did everywhere. It's a 12-month program. I get in there, and I become the head chef, which is the best job because food, once again, like, that's all you got when you're somewhere not really on your own accord. So I get there, and I become the head chef, and with another guy, and man, I'm really doing good. I am doing good. You think that you're just wanting to get out, and you're trying to find ways to smoke a cigarette, but like, I'm doing okay for an addict, off the streets in a rehab for a little bit. So I get in there. I'm doing all this stuff. I'm kind of working the program, to a medium capacity of what I probably could. And through that time, I was there for probably a month. I wrote this little spoken word that when I look back, because I don't even think I was saved yet, I don't even know how I wrote it. I didn't understand these concepts a week or 1 month into this rehab, right? So I get to December 29th, 2014. I was there, and my best friend, we had ended up, best friend in a month and a half at a rehab. I don't know what you call that, but we get in there, and we got in this argument. And we decided, he lived in St. Louis, so he's like, man, we can roll, and we can just go do some drugs and go hang out. I'll show you where everything's at, yada, yada. So, this idea right after Christmas. And So I took them up on that. We decided that let's check out of here. And they have to give you a $20 bill so you get a bus or whatever. So when you leave Teen Challenge, they take you about 10 miles down the road. They drop us off at a McDonald's. But, I mean, you've got like 2 huge luggage bags. You've got your comforter, multiple pillows, multiple pairs of shoes. You got all this stuff with you. So they drop us off at a McDonald's. This guy calls his dad, and his dad won't let me come. So there I am. I just left to go hang out with this guy and have a great time, and then he's gone. So with that $20 bill, I went to the gas station. I bought a pack of Newport 100s. That's what I'd smoked. Went and bought a pack of those, and this is where repentance came into my life. I bought that pack of cigarettes. This guy just left. My family's there's no way they're going to accept me back. So I remember smoking a cigarette. And I had that pack of cigarettes, and I remember looking at them, and I don't know, I mean, Jesus was involved. It just didn't kind of feel like he was there. But at this moment, I looked at that pack of cigarettes, and I said, if I smoke this pack of cigarettes, and I take this addiction back home with me, that every addiction of my life is going to come back. So the most powerful thing that I ever did in my life was take that pack of cigarettes and throw it in the trash. So I throw these cigarettes away, and I begged my dad, and I'd made this weird shift inside of me. And I made this shift, and, my dad came back, and it was almost just like I had a really big change in my heart in that moment. And he picks me up, he takes me back home, and he takes me to my wife's apartment that I didn't ever live at, where she's raising my daughter on her own. And I knock, and so she's shocked. She's like, you're supposed to be there for 12 and a half more months, What are you doing home? And so I begged her to let me in, and I stayed downstairs on a couch for weeks and weeks. And about 2 weeks in, I watched this sermon. It was called, and it's still called on YouTube today, it's called Most Shocking Sermon by Paul Washer. And I listen to all types, guys. I listen to all types of pastors, from T.D. Jakes to Matt Chandler to John Piper to Stephen Furtick. I'll listen to anybody. I really will. And Paul Washer, he's solid. He's a Baptist preacher. I watched this sermon, and at the end of it, it was like the scales were ripped off my eyes. Like I had repented in my heart, and then God spoke real truth to me through this sermon. And I remember at the end, it said, and this has got millions of views, it said, Paul Washer, pastor at Waldo Baptist Church in Metropolis. I said, no way. It's Wednesday. So my wife gets on, so we're going to church tonight. So we go to this church, and I'm so excited to meet this guy that just changed my life. And he's like, yeah, he stopped 12 years ago. So this guy's, he's not here. But regardless, I remember we go to church that next Sunday. I remember Pastor John Aiken, he was saying, next week we're going to have a 24/7 watch service where you're going to come in and pray. So he's talking about the different time blocks. We want to come for an hour or 2 hours at a time. And he said this statement, he said, if you used to party all night, I want you to come in the middle of the night. And I looked at my wife, I was like, yeah, okay. So we signed up for 12 a.m. To 2 a.m. So that next week, it was Saturday night. We went and prayed from 12 to 2. That was when I had officially, met Pastor John. And I shared that spoken word, that testimony with him that I wrote really before I was saved, right? I don't know. I formulated this thing, and it just worked out. And so he said, the next day, I want you to share that in front of the whole church. And so our church, I don't know how many people, anywhere from 270 to 400 people, depending on the weekend. And I was scared to death. I really couldn't sleep that night. And we were at church till 2. I probably didn't go to bed till 4. And then we had to wake up at like 8 or 9 and get ready to go to church at 10. So he ended up calling me up, and I share that spoken word. Y'all want me to share it? Y'all want to hear it? Okay. I didn't plan on it, but I certainly will. And this is exactly what it was. And this is going to be, end of January 2015. And it goes, opiates, Vicodin, Percocet, painkillers was my addiction, so be it. Y'all would have never known, though my mom, dad, and wife all see it. I used to rap. My flow was totally sick. I was a con artist, though I dressed the sharpest, smooth talker, plus I was socially rich. Little did y'all know I needed drugs to get out of bed. Withdrawn, totally opiate sick. I mean, I've been to many prisons. I've slept with many women. Drugs holding me in sin. You know, see a hot chick, drop my wedding ring in my pocket. God, why can't I stop this? Let's change the topic. I mean, my wife's a good Christian. My daughter's becoming a big kid, and I'm still under Satan's submission. Wanting drugs and women's attention, it's sickening. I swear. Let me back up. I've been to many prisons, slept with many women, drugs holding me in sin. You know, see a hot chick, drop my wedding ring in my pocket. God, why can't I stop this? Let's change the topic. I mean, my wife's a good Christian. My daughter's becoming a big kid, and I'm still under Satan's submission. Wanting drugs and women's attention, it's sickening. I swear I have good intentions, but I guess I'd rather just fit in. I was so sin-inspired, but now I'm inspired to be in God's empire, ducking Satan's hip fire, praying for a misfire, but I'm getting tired, Lord. Can you help this? Game of tug of war, selfish versus selflessness. I'm helpless in this fight, feeling hell sent. Rather than evangelic, when I'm feeling weak, he can smell it. But God's time has no end. Living day by day when I could live like there's no end. It didn't take me long to get to know him. God's deep in my heart. This time I got him sewn in. And it's like that. God's prepared me to fight back. When Satan comes at me, I'm spitting verses right back. Boy, Satan don't like that. And I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. And you can too, because you too will get tired of running off an empty tank. So get into his word. It's like fitness. Not for the body, but milk for the mind. Though you won't be sinless, but in fact you'll sin less when truly converted. No more sinful instinct, but sin will simply stink if it's a true conversion. And I've been put on this world as one of Jesus Christ's disciples. Tearing down all of these, Simon says you should follow American Idols. That's it. Yeah, appreciate it. So I shared that that day at church, and that night, for whatever reason, we stayed at my mom's house. She lived in an apartment in Metropolis. And so I remember my daughter was on a pallet down below by my wife, and I don't know, my mom was downstairs, I'm not sure, and I was laying in bed with my wife, and man, I was just praying, and I just heard God tell me to go in a room and, or in a closet and pray. So I go in a closet, man. I used to sneak away so much to like pop pills or, go hang out with different people. So when I went to sneak out to go pray, I was like, man, my life has really changed. And I remember coming back, and I probably prayed for like 30 minutes, which is very hard because I've got like ADHD. I would call it constructive ADHD now. I've tamed it a little bit, but like I couldn't focus on anything for any amount of time. Social media had been out. We've got the attention span of a goldfish nowadays. And I remember getting back in bed, and I was still praying, and I remember I felt a hand, just an invisible hand, come through and touch my heart, and it stopped all my organs. And this isn't like a dream; this is real. This really happened to me, where I felt a finger come and touch my heart, and it stopped everything: my heart from beating, my lungs from breathing, and from that day, I've forever been changed. And God really changed my life. Yeah, I appreciate it. Now, that's the start of it. Like that's those are the moments that changed my life. But in Christianity, we're always hearing about. If you want to come up, you can. We're always hearing about heart change. Like, when Jesus comes to live inside you and the Holy Spirit comes to live inside of you, whether that happened at the time of, when I threw that pack of cigarettes away, or maybe it was when I watched the Paul Washer sermon. I don't know. I know in February I got filled with the Holy Spirit, talking on the phone with a guy. And the one thing that I don't feel like is talked about enough is like our heart changes and our GPS, compass is going to heaven when our body decides it's done here. But nobody ever talks about the mind. Nobody ever talks about the mind. And I believe it's Romans 7:25. It says that you will serve the Lord with your mind. And then in Romans 12:1 and 2, I'm going to read those. If y'all got your Bibles, open up to Romans 12:1 and 2 real quick. We're going to focus on 2. When you got it, say got it. And I'm reading the English Standard Version. I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice. Anytime they talk about living sacrifice in the New Testament, it's a reference to the burnings and sacrifices that they did of animals and in the Old Testament. But what people don't ever talk about is like, whenever they had a sacrifice, they'd bring an animal onto the altar. The problem with a living sacrifice is we can get up off the altar, right? We're on it, but we can get up and we can leave at any time and go a whole new direction. So then you go into verse 2, it says, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good, acceptable, and perfect. And I feel like some of us are like saved, but our mind is not saved. I mean, we've got an old mind that is attached to a new heart, and we don't do anything with it. It takes a lot of work. I mean, if you all actually knew how powerful your mind was, you would focus on it a little bit more. Every time one of you shake hands, every time you go to open a car door, every time you go and take a step on the stairs, your mind knows what foot you use or what hand you use, but where you live at in your consciousness, it really doesn't. It doesn't, because there are things that are so far deep inside of you, that you don't even know that you can still change those things. There are thought patterns, the way you think about women, or the way women think about men, or the way that you raise your children because of the way that your parents raise you. Everything lives in your mind. I haven't listened to Eminem, those old songs, in years. I think I listened to them 4 years ago, just trying to remember just the things that I used to put myself through. And I can still, you tell me one song off those, it's still back there. Like those songs, I still have those lyrics back there right now. And our mind is so strong and so sharp. There's some of you moms right now that you're holding your posture right now. You've got one hand on your child. You also can check their temperature at the same time. Also knowing that about right now they're almost done down in children's service. Like, your mind is so powerful. It's so powerful, but some of you, we don't train our minds like we should. Me and CB, we were just talking about how we do it. What do we do on our day-to-day? How do we train our mind? How do we make it do what we want to do? If we serve the Lord with our mind, where is your mind at? We can do lung transplants. We can do heart transplants. The one thing that they can't do is they can't transplant your mind. And it says that we should have the mind of Christ. If you have given up on trying to renew and transform your mind, you need to make a significant effort to do that. I mean, you really, really do. All of your old habits, behaviors, things of your past, trauma in your past, they are lodged in your mind. They're there. And you can pull them out and work on them and retrain your thoughts and your mind. How much time do I got here? Okay. So, if in the Garden of Eden, you all know that it wasn't the fruit that lodged sin inside of humanity. It was the disobedience. So God gives Adam and Eve, he leases the world to them and says, you have all dominion and authority over this world. And he leases it to them. You can do anything you want. Just one thing you can't do is you cannot disobey this one word and go pull fruit from this tree and eat it. That was the one thing. Well, during that moment, that was whenever Satan suggested, because Satan can't do anything besides suggest. I heard one pastor call him the great suggester. He literally can't do anything else. And most of us that we say Satan is attacking us, are you doing something worth Satan attacking you? Or maybe that he has rooted himself into our American and just our world so much that we automatically live this certain way because of the strongholds he's put in place just in media, in our time in social media, frustration, stress, work, all of these things. Maybe he has just kind of created this life that we live in where he doesn't have to focus on us. We just do these things that everyone else does, and it just automatically happens.